15 years. That's how long it had been since Emma Riley first heard those words. The words that followed her like shadows. The words whispered behind hands at family gatherings, muttered in hospital break rooms, typed in anonymous comments across the internet. It won't work. She sat now in the home office of their Chicago penthouse, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The cursor blinked on the screen, patient and insistent. Publish. Such a small button, such an enormous weight. Around her, the evidence of their life together covered every surface. Photographs in mismatched frames. Zoe at 3, gap-toothed and grinning, basketball already clutched in her small hands. Emma Grace at 5, paint smeared across her cheek, holding up a lopsided ceramic bowl she'd made in art class. The wedding photo, that impossible image of her in white and Ethan in his custom tuxedo, her head barely reaching his chest even in heels. Impossible. That word again. Emma looked at the blog post she'd written. 3,000 words, 15 years distilled into paragraphs. The truth of how a woman who stood 5'2" and a man who towered at 6'8" had built something the world said couldn't exist. Her hand moved to the mouse, but before she clicked, her mind drifted back to where it all began. Back to a February night in Chicago, when the wind cut like broken glass and a small woman in an emerald dress stood outside the Palmer House Hotel trying to convince herself she belonged inside. Back to the beginning, February in Chicago was not kind. The wind came off Lake Michigan with a vengeance, finding every gap in every coat, every crack in every building. It sent pedestrians scrambling into doorways and coffee shops, hunching their shoulders against the cold that seemed to bite straight through to bone. Emma Riley stood outside the Palmer House Hotel, shivering, despite the wool coat wrapped tight around her shoulders. Underneath, the emerald green dress she'd saved 3 months to buy felt suddenly foolish. Too bright, too hopeful, too much. At 27, Emma understood her place in the world. She was a physical therapist at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, known for her gentle hands and infinite patience with the elderly patients everyone else found difficult. She lived in a studio apartment in Logan Square that cost too much and had a radiator that clanked through the night. She took the Blue Line to work every morning, coffee in a travel mug, earbuds playing podcasts about muscle rehabilitation and joint mobility. This world, the one beyond those massive revolving doors, was not hers. The Chicago Medical Foundation Gala, an event she would never have attended if her supervisor hadn't insisted every department send a representative. Emma had drawn the short straw. Or maybe Sarah, her coworker and closest friend at the hospital, had rigged it. Sarah believed Emma needed to get out more, to meet people, to do something other than work and go home to her empty apartment. Emma took a breath. The cold air burned her lungs. She thought about her grandmother, Margaret O'Connor, who'd raised her after Emma's parents died in a car accident when she was 8. Irish Margaret, everyone called her. Tough as nails, soft as butter. Dead now 3 years, but her voice still echoed in Emma's head. You're an O'Connor girl. We don't run from anything. Emma pushed through the revolving doors. The blast of heat hit her first, then the light. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, throwing rainbow prisms across marble columns and gilded walls. The ballroom stretched before her like something from a movie. Women in gowns that cost more than Emma's yearly rent. Men in tuxedos discussing investments and property portfolios in voices that assumed everyone listening understood. Emma clutched her simple black clutch purse and felt suddenly profoundly small. Not physically small, though she was that too. 5'2" in bare feet, barely 5'5" in the heels she'd borrowed from Sarah. But small in a way that had nothing to do with height. Small in the way a single star feels small when it realizes how vast the universe truly is. She moved along the edge of the ballroom, trying to look purposeful, trying to look like she belonged. A waiter passed with champagne flutes on a silver tray. Emma took one just to have something to hold. The bubbles tickled her nose when she sipped. That's when she saw him. Even in a room full of Chicago's elite, even among men who commanded attention through wealth or power or both, Ethan Cole stood apart. He was impossible to miss. 6'8", broad-shouldered, his frame making everyone around him look like children playing dress-up. Emma recognized him immediately. Even if you didn't follow basketball, and Emma didn't, you knew Ethan Cole. His face was on billboards across the city. The star center for the Chicago Bulls. The unstoppable force, the future of the franchise. But it wasn't his size that made Emma's breath catch in her throat. It was his eyes, even from across the crowded ballroom. Even through the sea of people orbiting him like satellites around the sun, she could see it, a kind of weariness, A loneliness that seemed completely at odds with the admirers surrounding him, laughing at jokes he wasn't making, touching his arm with practiced familiarity. He looked, Emma thought, like a man who desperately wanted to be anywhere else. Their eyes met across the room. Something passed between them in that moment. Something Emma couldn't name but felt deep in her chest. A recognition, a pull, like finding something you didn't know you'd lost. Ethan excused himself from his group. Emma watched him move through the crowd with surprising grace for a man his size. People parted for him automatically, some recognizing him, others simply responding to his presence. He was heading toward her. Panic fluttered in Emma's stomach. She considered bolting, pretending she hadn't seen him, finding the nearest exit and catching the blue line home where she belonged. But Irish Margaret's voice whispered in her head again. "We don't run." Emma stood her ground. Up close, Ethan Cole was even more imposing. Emma had to tilt her head back, her neck actually aching from the angle required to meet his gaze. But those eyes up close were even more striking, dark and deep and holding something that looked almost like hope. He spoke first. His voice was warm, with a hint of amusement that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere but here." Emma blinked. Of all the opening lines she might have expected, that wasn't one of them. A surprised laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who feels exactly the same way. Ethan smiled, and the expression transformed his entire face. The intimidating athlete vanished. In his place stood someone almost boyish. Someone real. Ethan Cole. And before you say it, yes, I play basketball. No, I don't want to talk about last night's game. Yes, I really am this tall. Despite herself, despite the absurdity of the situation, Emma laughed again. Something about his directness, his self-deprecating humor, put her at ease. Emma Riley. I'm a physical therapist. And before you ask, no, I can't fix your jump shot. She paused, her professional eye catching something in the way he held himself. A subtle favoring, a careful positioning. But I probably could help with that shoulder you keep favoring. Ethan's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. You notice that? I notice how people move. It's literally my job. Emma tilted her head, studying him with professional interest. The party, the crowd, the impossibility of this conversation, all of it faded. She saw only the body in front of her, the subtle tells of old injury. You're compensating. Probably an old rotator cuff injury you never fully rehabbed because the season didn't give you time. For the first time all evening, Ethan felt truly seen. Not as a commodity, not as a walking highlight reel. Not as the future of the franchise or a marketing opportunity, but as a person. This tiny woman with intelligent green eyes and a directness that was completely refreshing was looking at him like he was human. He made a decision, the kind of impulsive decision that went against everything his agent advised, everything his carefully managed public image required. Would you like to get out of here? The words left his mouth before he could think them through. There's a diner about 3 blocks away. Best pie in Chicago. Much better company than this circus. Emma knew she should say no. She knew that a man like Ethan Cole, a professional athlete worth millions, living in a stratosphere so far above hers, they might as well be different species, was not someone she should follow into the February night. She knew this was probably just a momentary impulse he'd forget by morning. She knew getting involved with someone so far outside her world was asking for heartbreak. But there was something in his eyes, a genuine loneliness that matched the ache she carried in her own chest. The same ache that woke her at 2 in the morning in her studio apartment, wondering if this was all there was. Work and sleep and the blue line, and elderly patients who forgot her name the next day. I love pie, she heard herself say. They slipped out a side entrance like teenagers escaping curfew. The February wind that had seemed brutal before now felt exhilarating. Ethan shrugged out of his tuxedo jacket without a word and draped it around Emma's shoulders. The fabric was still warm from his body, carrying a scent that was clean soap and something indefinably him. The jacket hung on her like a tent. The sleeves extended far past her hands, the hem falling nearly to her knees. Emma looked up at Ethan, saw him looking down at her in his jacket, and something twisted in her chest at the expression on his face. Something tender. Something that looked almost like wonder. They walked 3 blocks in comfortable silence, their breath fogging in the cold air, their footsteps crunching on the salt-scattered sidewalks. Lou's Diner was exactly as promised. A hole-in-the-wall place with cracked red vinyl booths and a black and white checkered floor that had seen better decades. The smell of coffee and frying bacon hung thick in the air. A waitress who had to be pushing 70 looked up from behind the counter. Honey, she said, grabbing two menus. Sit anywhere you like. Ethan led Emma to a corner booth. He slid in, and his knees immediately hit the underside of the table. He had to angle them sideways. Emma sat across from him, and even sitting back, her feet barely touched the floor. The physical contrast was almost comical. The waitress, whose name tag read Maggie, brought coffee without asking. She set down two mugs that were chipped around the rims, but clean. The coffee was strong enough to strip paint and exactly what Emma needed. What can I get you two? Apple pie for me, Ethan said. Cherry for me, Emma added. Maggie nodded and shuffled away. Emma wrapped her small hands around the coffee mug, letting the heat seep into her fingers. Across from her, Ethan did the same, and Emma couldn't help but notice how the mug looked like a child's toy in his grip. So, Ethan said after a moment, physical therapy. How does someone end up doing that? Emma considered lying, giving him the polished answer she gave at parties, the one that made her sound altruistic and noble. But something about the way he was looking at her, the genuine interest in his eyes, made her tell the truth. My grandmother had a stroke when I was 16. The physical therapist who worked with her was the first person who made her believe she could recover, made her believe her body could do things she'd given up on. I wanted to be that person for someone else. There was a simplicity to her answer, an honesty that Ethan found compelling. In his world, everyone had angles, agendas, things they wanted from him, endorsement, deals to pitch, charities to promote, photographs to take. Emma just was. What about you? Emma asked. How does someone end up 7 feet tall and playing professional basketball? 6'8", Ethan corrected with a slight smile. And honestly, I didn't have much choice. When you're this size, everyone just assumes basketball is your destiny. Coaches started recruiting me when I was 14. I was good at it, so I kept doing it. He paused. The honesty in his next words surprised even him. But sometimes I wonder what I would have chosen if the choice had actually been mine. Emma leaned forward slightly, her whole body engaged in listening. It was something she did with patience, Ethan realized. This complete attention, this presence that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. Do you like it? Emma asked simply. Playing, I mean. Not the fame or the money, just the game itself. Ethan considered this. Really considered it. He couldn't remember the last time someone had asked him that question. Had asked what he wanted, what he felt, separate from what he could do for them. Yeah, he said finally. Yeah, I do. There's this moment right before the buzzer when everything goes quiet in my head and it's just me and the ball and the basket. Everything else disappears. Those moments make everything else worth it. That's how I feel when I'm working with patients, Emma said softly. When I can see the exact moment they realize they're stronger than they thought, that their body can do things they'd given up on. Everything else just falls away. They talked for 3 hours. Maggie brought the pie. They ate it, barely tasting it, too absorbed in conversation. She brought more coffee, refilled their mugs without comment. The diner slowly emptied around them as the night grew late. They talked about Emma's grandmother, Irish Margaret, who'd been tough as nails and soft as butter. About Ethan's mother, Diana, who still lived in his childhood home in Atlanta and refused to let him buy her a new one. They talked about the pressure of expectations, about the weight of other people's dreams, about the strange loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people who only see what they want to see. Ethan told her about growing up poor in Atlanta, about his mother working double shifts as a nursing assistant to keep him fed, about the basketball scouts who'd shown up when he was barely in high school, treating him like a commodity even then, about the contract negotiations and endorsement deals and the feeling that he'd become a product instead of a person. Emma told him about the car accident that killed her parents, about moving in with her grandmother, about the stroke that had terrified her at 16, watching this woman who'd seemed invincible suddenly struggle to lift a spoon, about choosing physical therapy not just to help others, but to understand how bodies could betray us and how we could fight back. The pie sat half-eaten on plates between them. The coffee grew cold in their mugs. Neither noticed. Can I ask you something? Emma said as Maggie started wiping down tables, a gentle hint that closing time approached. Ethan nodded. People must approach you all the time. Why did you talk to me? Ethan was quiet for a moment, his large hands wrapped around his coffee mug. When he spoke, his voice was low and honest, because when you looked at me, you saw my shoulder injury. Not my stats, not my contract, not what I could do for you. You saw me hurting, and your instinct was to help. Do you know how rare that is? Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks. I didn't mean to be rude, analyzing you like that. You weren't rude, you were real. Ethan reached across the table. His hand, massive and calloused from years of handling a basketball, gently covered both of hers. The size difference was startling. His one hand encompassed both of hers completely. Emma felt a flutter of something in her stomach that was part nervousness, part something she didn't want to name yet. "I'd like to see you again," Ethan said, his voice dropping lower. "If you're willing to deal with the circus that comes with being seen with me. It won't be easy. People will have opinions." Lots of opinions. Emma looked down at their hands. At the way his skin, several shades darker than hers, contrasted with her own pale Irish complexion. She thought about the whispers that would follow, the stares, the assumptions people would make. She thought about the impossibility of it all. This giant of a man and her barely 5'2", from completely different worlds, different backgrounds, different everything. "I'd like that too," she heard herself say. Maggie was making pointed movements now, stacking chairs on tables. Ethan paid the bill, leaving a tip that made Maggie's eyes widen. They walked out into the February night. The wind had died down. The city felt quiet, expectant. Ethan walked Emma to her car, a beat-up Honda Civic that was older than some of his teammates. He didn't seem to notice or care. He opened her door with the kind of old-fashioned courtesy that seemed at odds with his imposing size. When he leaned down to kiss her goodnight, Emma had to rise on her tiptoes even as he bent nearly double. The kiss was gentle, questioning, his lips soft against hers, but Emma could feel the restrained power in him, the careful control he maintained over his own strength, and something about that control made her pulse race. She drove home in a daze, his jacket still around her shoulders, smelling of him. In her rearview mirror, she saw him standing on the sidewalk, watching her go. Still there, still watching, making sure she got away safely. In her studio apartment, Emma hung his jacket carefully in her closet. She knew she should return it, but not yet, not just yet. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the radiator clank. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Made it home safe?" She smiled in the darkness. "Yes. Thank you for the pie. Best 3 hours I've spent in years. Can I see you this weekend?" Emma's heart hammered in her chest. This was crazy. This was impossible. This was asking for trouble. "Yes," she typed back. She fell asleep, still smiling. The next 3 months were a whirlwind. Ethan pursued her with a single-minded determination that reminded Emma why he was so successful on the court. When Ethan Cole wanted something, he didn't hesitate. He didn't second-guess. He went after it. Flowers arrived at the hospital, not expensive roses meant to impress, daisies. Because Emma had mentioned once, in passing during one of their late-night phone conversations, that daisies were her favorite, that her grandmother had kept them in a vase on the kitchen table year-round. Ethan showed up at her apartment after away games, sometimes at 2 in the morning, just to see her for 20 minutes before she had to sleep for her early shift. He'd stand in her tiny studio, his head nearly touching the ceiling, looking absurdly large among her thrift store furniture, and tell her about Phoenix or Portland or wherever the team had played. And Emma would make him tea because he didn't drink coffee after 6, and they'd sit on her hand-me-down couch, and he'd hold her like she was made of glass. They went to museums during the day when they were less crowded. The Art Institute, where Emma showed him her favorite painting, Nighthawks by Edward Hopper. The loneliness of it spoke to her, she said. The way people could be together and still alone. Ethan stood beside her, studying the painting, and understood exactly what she meant. They found small restaurants in neighborhoods where no one recognized him. Ethiopian food in Uptown, Vietnamese in Argyle. A Polish diner in Avondale where the pierogi reminded Emma of the ones her grandmother used to make, though she'd never admit it to the fierce Polish women running the place. They went to late-night movies where they could sit in the back row and Ethan could actually stretch his legs. Action movies because Emma had a secret love for explosions and car chases. Art films that put Ethan to sleep but he'd never admit it. And Emma would elbow him gently when he started to snore. But the whispers followed them everywhere. At the hospital, Emma's coworkers had opinions, delivered with false concern that barely masked judgment. "He's so big," Sophie once said. "I mean, have you thought about how that would even work?" "Someone like him is used to a certain kind of woman," another offered. "You know, glamorous. Models, Instagram influencers." "Not that you're not pretty, Emma, but athletes like him, they have options. Lots of options. Why would he settle for someone so ordinary?" Emma smiled and said nothing, but the words burrowed deep. Ethan's teammates were blunter. "Man, she's tiny," his backup center said in the locker room, loud enough for Ethan to hear. "You could break her without even trying." Have you thought about that? The jokes got cruder, more explicit. Ethan stopped the worst of them with a look, but he couldn't stop them all. Even his mother, when Emma finally met her during a trip to Atlanta in April, pulled her son aside. Emma couldn't hear the conversation, but she could see the concern on Diana Cole's face. The way she gestured between Ethan and Emma with clear skepticism about the physical logistics of their relationship. The comments aided Emma in ways she tried not to show. Late at night, alone in her apartment, she found herself researching online. Forums where people discussed relationships with significant size differences. Medical articles about physical compatibility. The more she read, the more anxious she became. Ethan noticed. Of course he noticed. He always noticed. One night in early May, as they sat in his penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, the city lights spread out below them like scattered stars, he finally asked. Talk to me. Something's been bothering you for weeks. Emma curled into the corner of his enormous couch, pulling her knees to her chest, making herself small. A defensive position she'd learned as a child and never quite outgrown. Do you ever think about what everyone's saying? About how we don't fit? Ethan moved from his chair to sit beside her. The couch dipped under his weight. He turned to face her, and his expression was so serious it made Emma's heart ache. Sophie, look at me. She did. Met those dark eyes that had become so familiar, so beloved. I think about it every day, he said, honestly. I think about how I have to be careful every time I hug you, because I'm afraid I'll hurt you. I think about how people stare at us like we're a circus act. I think about how you deserve someone who doesn't come with cameras and commentary and constant judgment. He paused, reached out and took her small hand in his large one. But I also think about how you're the first person who ever made me feel like I was more than my height and my jump shot. I think about how you laugh at my terrible jokes and how you fall asleep during movies, but pretend you were awake the whole time. I think about how I've never felt more myself than when I'm with you. His thumb traced circles on her palm. So yeah, I think about it, but it doesn't change how I feel. Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes. What if everyone's right? What if we're just fooling ourselves? Ethan took her hand and pressed it against his chest. She could feel his heart beating. Steady, strong, sure. Then we'll figure it out together. But Emma, I need you to hear me. I love you. Not despite our differences. Not because I have some size fetish or you have a savior complex. I love you because when I'm with you, I finally feel like I found my home. The place where I fit, even though the world says I shouldn't. Emma's voice came out as a whisper. I love you too. Saying it out loud felt like jumping off a cliff, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Then marry me, the words hung in the air between them. Emma's eyes went wide, her mouth opened and closed without sound. This couldn't be happening. They'd only known each other 3 months. This was crazy. This was impossible. Ethan slid off the couch and onto one knee. It brought him almost to her eye level. From his pocket, he pulled a small velvet box. I know it's fast, he said. I know people will say we're crazy. I know there are 1,000 practical reasons to wait. But Emma, I have spent my entire life being told what I should do, who I should be, what makes sense for someone like me. You're the first thing I've ever chosen just because my heart said yes. He opened the box. Inside, a simple solitaire diamond caught the city lights from the window and threw tiny rainbows across the ceiling. Marry me. Not because it makes sense, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Emma looked at the ring. She looked at Ethan, this enormous man who held himself so carefully around her, whose eyes held nothing but hope and love and a vulnerability that took her breath away. She thought about all the warnings, all the doubt, all the very real concerns about their physical compatibility that had been keeping her awake at night. And then she thought about the past 3 months, about conversations that stretched until dawn, about the way he made her laugh, about how safe she felt in his arms despite his size. Maybe because of his size, about how he was the first person in years who'd made her feel truly seen. Yes, she said. She watched his face transform with joy. Yes, I'll marry you. He kissed her then, still on his knees, and Emma tasted salt on his lips and realized he was crying. This enormous, powerful man was crying because she'd said yes. The engagement announcement broke the internet. Sports blogs debated it. Morning shows discussed it. Social media exploded with opinions ranging from supportive to cruel. Emma's inbox filled with messages from strangers, some offering congratulations, others offering unsolicited advice about everything from wedding night positions to medical procedures she should consider. Ethan's agent called it a publicity nightmare. His teammates threw him a bachelor party and made jokes that made Emma blush when Ethan told her about them later. Jokes all centered around the same theme: physical impossibility. Emma's friends threw her a bachelorette party where the conversation inevitably turned to the same concerns, delivered with wine and giggles but carrying real worry underneath. "Have you talked to your doctor?" Sarah asked, her closest friend, the one person Emma trusted most. "I mean, realistically, Emma, he's huge. You're tiny. Sex is going to be an issue. We'll figure it out," Emma said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. The truth was, she and Ethan hadn't consummated their relationship yet. It wasn't for lack of desire. The chemistry between them was electric, every kiss leaving them both breathless and wanting more. But Ethan had been adamant about waiting. "I don't want to hurt you," he'd said during one particularly heated makeout session that had left them both frustrated. "I need to know you're sure that we've thought this through." Emma had been touched by his concern, even as her body ached with unfulfilled need. But the waiting also gave her anxiety time to grow. Fed by every comment, every warning, every expression of concern from well-meaning friends and strangers alike. The wedding was set for early June, small and intimate, just family and close friends in a garden ceremony. They had 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks for Emma to convince herself this wasn't the biggest mistake of her life. 3 weeks to silence the voices that said it wouldn't work. 3 weeks to believe that love really could be enough. 3 weeks until she'd have to prove everyone wrong or prove them right. 3 weeks. That's all the time Emma had to prepare. 3 weeks to plan a wedding and 3 weeks to ignore the growing course of doubt. 3 weeks to convince herself that standing before God and family and promising forever to a man the world said she couldn't physically be with was not insanity. But it was the longest 3 weeks of her life. The bachelor party happened on a Thursday night. Ethan didn't want one, but his teammates insisted. What they called a party was really an excuse to gather at an upscale club downtown, drink expensive whiskey, and offer unsolicited advice about marriage to a man who'd barely been in a serious relationship before Emma. Ethan sat in a leather booth, nursing a bourbon he didn't want, surrounded by men he called friends, but who felt increasingly like strangers. The music pounded. Women in short dresses circled their table like sharks sensing blood. His teammates got louder with each round of drinks. Marcus, his power forward and closest thing to a best friend on the team, leaned close. His breath smelled like whiskey and the wings they'd ordered an hour ago. "Man, you sure about this? Marriage is a big step, I'm sure," Ethan said. "But that girl," Marcus shook his head. "She's what, 5'2", 5'3", 5'2", and you're 6'8". 6'8", Ethan confirmed, his jaw tightening. "I'm just saying, man, wedding night's gonna be interesting. You better take it slow. Real slow, don't want to break your wife on your honeymoon." The table erupted in laughter. Crude jokes followed, each one more explicit than the last. Suggestions about positions, warnings about being gentle, comparisons to mismatched puzzle pieces. Ethan's hands clenched around his glass. Devin, the backup center who'd made the crack in the locker room months ago, was 3 drinks past sober. "Seriously though, E. Have you two even, you know?" Devin made a gesture that left nothing to imagination. The table went quiet. All eyes on Ethan. "That's none of your business," Ethan said quietly. "Come on, man, we're just looking out for you." Devin grinned. "You're gonna need a game plan, maybe some instructional videos or something." More laughter. Ethan set his glass down carefully. Stood. His size made everyone at the table look small, made the laughter die. "I'm done here." Marcus stood too, grabbed Ethan's arm. His expression had sobered. "Hey, ignore these idiots. They're drunk." Ethan looked at his friend, saw genuine concern there beneath the alcohol haze. "Do you really love her?" Marcus asked quietly. "More than basketball, more than anything." Marcus studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. "Then forget what everyone says. Love's rare, man, real love. Don't let anyone make you doubt it." Ethan left the club at 11, drove home through empty Chicago streets. In his penthouse, he stood by the window, looking out at the city, thinking about Emma, wondering if she was okay, if her bachelorette party was going better than his bachelor party. He pulled out his phone, typed a message. "Thinking about you." 3 dots appeared immediately, then her response. "Thinking about you too. How's the party? Headed home early, missed you." Her reply took longer this time. 3 more days, then I'm yours forever." Ethan smiled in the darkness. "You're already mine. Have been since that night at the diner." He fell asleep on the couch, phone in hand, waiting for her response. Emma's bachelorette party was quieter but no less uncomfortable. Sarah had organized it at her apartment in Wicker Park. Just 5 women. Emma, Sarah, 2 other nurses from the hospital, and Emma's cousin Kelly, who'd driven up from Champagne, wine and cheese and carefully wrapped gifts. The conversation stayed light at first. Work gossip, bad dates, terrible patience. But as the wine flowed and the night grew late, the questions became more pointed. Have you talked to your doctor? Sarah asked. She'd had 3 glasses of Pinot Grigio and her filter had disappeared 2 glasses ago. About what? Emma knew what, but she wanted Sarah to say it. About the wedding night, about sex. Emma, I love you. You know I do, but realistically, he's huge. You're tiny. This is going to be an issue. Emma felt heat creep up her neck. The other women had gone quiet, all watching, waiting for her answer. We'll figure it out, Emma said, the same response she'd been giving for weeks now. A non-answer that satisfied no one. Have you two even, done anything? Kelly asked. Her cousin had always been blunt, a family trait they shared. We're waiting. Until the wedding? Emma nodded. Oh, honey. Sarah set down her wine glass. Her expression had shifted from tipsy to genuinely worried. That's sweet. Really it is. But don't you think you should, test the waters first? Make sure it's even possible? It's possible, Emma said quietly. How do you know? Because I love him, and he loves me, and we'll make it work. Love doesn't change biology, one of the other nurses said. Not unkindly, just stating facts. You're what, 100 pounds? He's got to be, 250? 260? 270? Emma said. She knew his weight, knew everything about his body. Had studied it with professional interest and personal fascination. Emma, Sarah leaned forward. I'm not trying to scare you, but I work in labor and delivery. I've seen what happens when there's too much size difference, when things don't fit right. Tears, injuries, pain, real pain. Then we'll go slow, Emma said. Her voice had an edge now. We'll be careful. We'll communicate. We're adults. We can figure this out. But what if you can't? Kelly asked softly. The question hung in the air. Emma looked around at these women who claimed to care about her, who said they wanted the best for her, but whose doubt felt like tiny cuts, death by 1,000 well-meaning warnings. Then we'll deal with that too, Emma said. But I'm not calling off my wedding because you think my fiancé's too big for me. She stood. The room spun slightly. She'd had more wine than she realized. Thank you for the party, for the gifts, for caring. But I need to go home now. Sarah stood too, reached for Emma's arm. Emma, wait. We're not trying to hurt you. I know, Emma said, and that's what makes it worse. She left. Took an Uber home because she'd had too much wine to drive. Sat in the back seat while Chicago blurred past the window. Her phone buzzed. Ethan, thinking about you. She typed back through tears she wouldn't let fall. Thinking about you too. How's the party? His response came quickly. He'd left early too. Of course he had. They were the same, she and Ethan. 2 people who didn't quite fit in their respective worlds. Finding each other. Choosing each other. She fell asleep in her clothes. Phone clutched to her chest. 3 days away from becoming Mrs. Emma Riley Cole. 3 days away from proving everyone wrong. Or destroying herself trying. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and warm. Unusual for early June in Chicago. No rain, no wind, just perfect blue sky and temperatures that hovered in the low 70s. Emma woke at 6. Couldn't sleep. Too much nervous energy. Too many thoughts spiraling through her head. She made coffee, stared at the wedding dress hanging on her closet door. Simple white silk. Tea length. Nothing fancy. Nothing that cost more than she made in a month. Her phone buzzed. Sarah, I'm sorry about the other night. I love you. Today's going to be perfect. Emma typed back. I love you too. See you at 2. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 in the afternoon at Garfield Park Conservatory. Emma had always loved that place. The lush greenery, the glass walls, the feeling of being inside something alive and growing. They'd rented the Fern Room, capacity 50. They'd invited 48, small, intimate, theirs. Emma showered, dried her hair. Sarah arrived at noon with the other bridesmaids. They helped her dress, did her makeup, wove baby's breath into her hair. Emma looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. You're beautiful, Sarah whispered. I'm terrified, Emma whispered back. That's normal. Every bride is terrified. Not of this, Emma thought, but she said nothing. At the conservatory, in a room they'd converted into a makeshift groom's quarters, Ethan stood in front of a mirror, adjusting his bow tie for the 10th time. His hands were shaking. Devin, serving as best man despite the bachelor party disaster, watched from a folding chair. You good, man? No, Ethan admitted. I'm about to pass out. From nerves or the tux? The custom tuxedo fit perfectly. Had to. Nothing off the rack fit Ethan's frame, but it still felt constraining, like wearing armor. Both, Ethan said. The door opened. Diana Cole swept in, elegant in navy blue, her eyes already wet with tears she was trying not to shed. Baby, she said, and opened her arms. Ethan bent down. Let his mother hug him. Felt 5 years old again. You look so handsome, Diana whispered. Your daddy would be so proud. Ethan's father had died when he was 12. Heart attack. Sudden. Devastating. They never talked about him. But today his absence felt massive. Mama, Ethan said quietly, do you think I'm making a mistake? Diana pulled back, looked up at her son, reached up and cupped his face in her hands. I think you found something most people spend their whole lives searching for. I think that girl loves you for real. Not for what you can do or what you can buy or what you can give her. She loves you. And baby, that's rare. That's precious. Don't let anyone make you doubt it. What about the physical stuff? The things people keep saying? Diana's expression turned fierce. You listen to me. You are the most careful person I know. You have been gentle your entire life because you had to be. Because you knew your strength could hurt people if you weren't careful. You will be careful with her. You will be patient. And you will love her right. I'm not worried about that, she paused, smiled. What I'm worried about is that you're going to cry during your vows and embarrass yourself. Ethan laughed, a real laugh, the first one all day. I probably will. Good, shows you're human. Diana left to find her seat. Devin stood, clapped Ethan on the shoulder. It's time, man. The fern room at Garfield Park Conservatory was exactly as Emma had imagined. Maybe better. Ferns cascaded from hanging baskets. Sunlight filtered through the glass ceiling. White folding chairs arranged in neat rows. A simple arch woven with ivy and white roses. 50 people. That's all. Family, close friends, no media, no cameras except the photographer they'd hired. Emma had been adamant about that. A string quartet played Pachelbel's canon. The guests stood. Emma appeared at the back of the room on her father's arm, except it wasn't her father. Her father was dead. Had been for 19 years. Instead, it was her Uncle Tom, her father's brother, the closest thing she had. She walked down the aisle, each step feeling surreal. She saw faces, Sarah crying already, Diana beaming, Ethan's teammates looking uncomfortable in suits, her cousins, co-workers, the few people who mattered. And at the end of the aisle, Ethan. He stood beside the arch, hands clasped in front of him, and when he saw her, his face did something Emma had never seen before. It crumpled, just for a second, like he couldn't believe she was real. Like he couldn't believe she was actually walking toward him. She reached the arch. Uncle Tom kissed her cheek, placed her hand in Ethan's. The size difference was startling. Her hand disappeared completely in his, but his grip was gentle, trembling slightly. The officiant, a friend of Diana's, began speaking. Emma heard none of it. She was looking up at Ethan. He was looking down at her. The world narrowed to just this, just them, the vows. Emma had written hers at 2 in the morning 3 days ago, crying into her laptop, trying to find words big enough for what she felt. Ethan, she began, and her voice shook. When I met you, I thought I knew what my life was going to be. Small, safe, predictable. You terrified me. Not because of your size, but because you made me want more. You made me believe I deserved more. She took a breath. I promise to trust you with my heart, with my body, with my life. I promise to stand beside you when the world doubts us, to choose you every single day, to be your home as you are mine. Her voice broke on the last word. Ethan's turn. He'd written his vows too, labored over them, crossed out lines, started over, finally settling on the truth. Emma, his voice was rough. You are the strongest person I've ever met, not because of your size, but because you chose to love me anyway, despite what everyone said, despite the easier path. He squeezed her hand gently. I promise to be worthy of that choice, to be gentle with your body, to be fierce about your dreams, to protect you, to cherish you, to love you with everything I am. A tear slid down his cheek. You are my home, my peace, my everything. The officiant smiled. By the power vested in me by the state of Illinois, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Ethan, you may kiss your bride. Ethan bent down. Emma rose on her tiptoe. Even in heels, even with him bending almost double, the logistics were complicated. But their lips met, soft, sure, sealing something that felt inevitable. The guests erupted in applause. They walked back down the aisle together. Husband and wife. Emma saw people crying, saw them smiling, saw the love, but she also saw the doubt, the concern, the whispered conversations about what would happen tonight. She pushed it away. Today was perfect. Today was theirs. The reception was short. Dinner in the conservatory's event space. Speeches that made people laugh and creep on. The first dance where Ethan held Emma so carefully, like she might break. Swaying to Etta James singing at last. Cake cutting, bouquet tossing, all the traditional moments. But underneath, Emma felt the clock ticking, felt the night approaching, felt the moment coming when they'd be alone, when she'd have to prove that love really was enough. The hotel suite was beautiful. Ethan had spared no expense. The Peninsula Chicago, the rooftop suite, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, king bed piled with white pillows, rose petals scattered across surfaces, champagne chilling in a silver bucket. Romantic, perfect, terrifying. They arrived at 10. Ethan carried Emma over the threshold because tradition demanded bought it, set her down gently just inside the door. They stood there for a moment, husband and wife, alone for the first time as married people. The silence stretched. "I need to change," Emma said finally. Her voice sounded strange. Too high, too tight. She grabbed her overnight bag, fled to the bathroom, locked the door, leaned against it, breathing hard. In the mirror, she saw herself, still in her wedding dress, makeup perfect, hair coming loose from its pins. She looked like a bride, felt like a fraud. She'd bought a negligee, white silk, delicate, feminine, her friends had insisted. Sarah had taken her shopping, had picked this one out, said it would drive Ethan crazy. Emma changed. The silk felt cool against her skin. She looked in the mirror again. The negligee was beautiful, made her look small, delicate, breakable. She thought about Sarah's warnings, about the medical realities, about tears and injuries and pain. She thought about turning the doorknob, walking out, facing her husband. She thought about running. 20 minutes passed, then 30. She heard Ethan moving around in the bedroom, heard him pause outside the bathroom door. "Emma," his voice was soft, "we don't have to do anything tonight." She closed her eyes, pressed her hand against the door. "I know, I can feel how scared you are, even through the door." Emma laughed. It came out more like a sob. "I'm terrified." Silence, then Ethan's voice even softer. "Me too." That admission broke something in Emma. She opened the door. Ethan stood there. He'd changed too. Dress shirt and pants gone, wearing only sleep pants. His chest bare, muscled and broad and impossibly large. He looked down at her, his eyes tracked over the negligee. Something flashed in his expression. Heat, want, but also tenderness. "You're beautiful," he said. Emma felt tears threaten. "Everyone says it won't work, that you're too big, that I'm too small, that we'll hurt each other trying." Ethan reached down, took her hand, led her into the bedroom, sat on the edge of the enormous bed, pulled her gently to stand between his knees. Even sitting, they were almost eye level. "Listen to me," he said. His hands rested on her hips, light, barely touching. "I have been careful my entire life. Careful not to use my size to intimidate. Careful not to hurt people accidentally. Careful to control my strength." His thumbs traced small circles through the silk. "With you, I will be more careful than I have ever been. We will go slow. We will stop if anything hurts. We will figure out what works for us, not what works for anyone else. Okay?" Emma nodded, some of the fear easing. "Okay." Ethan stood, and suddenly the size difference was stark again. He towered over her. She had to tilt her head back to see his face. He could hurt her so easily, could overpower her without trying. But he wouldn't, she knew that, knew it in her bones. "Come here," he said softly. He lifted her, effortless, like she weighed nothing, carried her to the bed, laid her down on the white sheets with a gentleness that seemed impossible for hands that large. He stood there for a moment, just looking at her, and Emma saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Hunger, yes, but also something deeper. "Reverence, you're so beautiful," he said. His voice was rough. "I've been wanting this, wanting you, for so long." He moved on to the bed beside her, not over her, not crowding her, giving her space. "But Emma, we're going to do this right. We're going to take our time. I need you to promise me you'll tell me if anything feels wrong, if anything hurts. Promise me." "I promise," Emma whispered. What followed was slow, patient, Ethan mapping her body with his hands, learning what made her gasp, what made her arch into his touch, what made her forget to be afraid. He kissed her neck, her collarbone, the valley between her breasts. His mouth was hot against her skin. His hands were gentle, always gentle. Even as his breathing grew ragged, even as she felt the restraint in every touch. Emma felt the fear melting, replaced by something else. Heat, need, want. She reached for him, her small hands exploring his chest, feeling muscles shift under skin, feeling his heart hammering. "That's it," he murmured. "Just feel. Just be here with me." Time became fluid. Minutes or hours. Emma lost track, lost herself in sensation. In his hands, his mouth, the careful way he touched her like she was precious. When he finally moved over her, blocking out the city lights, Emma felt a moment of panic. He was so large, so heavy, but he held his weight on his forearms, careful not to crush her. "Look at me," he said. "Keep your eyes on mine." She did, locked onto those dark eyes, let them anchor her. There was pressure. Yes, an impossible fullness as he slowly, incrementally worked himself inside. But there was no pain, just a stretching that bordered on too much but never quite crossed that line. "Breathe," he coached, his own breathing ragged with the effort of control. "Just breathe, baby. You're doing so well." Sweat beaded on his forehead, his massive arms trembled, with the strain of holding himself back, of not just plunging forward like every instinct screamed at him to do. Emma focused on his eyes, on the love and concern she saw there. She wrapped her legs around his waist, or tried to. They didn't quite reach, but the movement pulled him deeper. Ethan groaned, a sound from the depths of his soul. "Emma, if you do that, I won't be able to control myself." "Then don't," she heard herself say. "I trust you. I want all of you." Something in Ethan's control snapped. He drove forward, seated himself completely, and Emma's back arched off the bed as she cried out. Not in pain, in shock at the sensation of being so utterly filled, so completely possessed, so perfectly joined. "Did I hurt you?" Ethan froze, his entire body rigid. "Tell me I didn't hurt you." "No," Emma gasped. It's so much. You're so much. I feel like I can't breathe. Like you're everywhere inside me. Do you want me to stop?" "Don't you dare." Ethan's laugh was breathless with relief. He began to move, slow, careful, building a rhythm, finding angles that made Emma see stars. And Emma discovered something. Being small beneath him didn't make her weak. His size didn't diminish her. If anything, the contrast heightened everything, made every sensation more intense, every touch more electric. They moved together, learning, adjusting, finding what worked. And what worked was everything, every angle, every rhythm, every breathless moment where they forgot where one ended and the other began. After, they lay tangled together. Emma's body trembling with aftershocks. Ethan holding her carefully. Both of them trying to catch their breath. Small bruises bloomed on Emma's hips where his fingers had gripped. Not from violence, from passion. From the impossibility of his hands knowing their own strength when lost in the moment. "I hurt you," Ethan said when he saw them, his voice heavy with guilt. "No," Emma said firmly. "You loved me. There's a difference. These aren't injuries. They're proof. Proof of what? That what we have works. That everyone who said it was impossible was wrong." She touched one of the bruises tenderly. "These are proof that we fit. That love really can bridge any gap." Ethan pulled her closer, pressed his lips to her temple. "I love you so much. I love you too." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other. Proof that the impossible was possible after all. 3 months later, Emma stood in the bathroom of their new apartment, staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. Her hands shook. She'd missed her period, had been feeling nauseous for weeks, had assumed it was stress from the wedding, from moving, from adjusting to married life. But no, 2 pink lines didn't lie. She was pregnant. Terror and joy warred in her chest. A baby. She was going to have Ethan's baby. They were going to be parents. She thought about the wedding night, about proving everyone wrong, about how their bodies had fit together despite the odds. But pregnancy was different. Pregnancy meant growing a baby that would likely be large, very large, in a body that was very small. Emma took a breath, opened the bathroom door. Ethan was in the kitchen, making dinner, humming to himself, happy. She walked to him, held out the test wordlessly. Ethan looked down. His expression shifted from confusion to understanding to pure joy in the span of seconds. "We're having a baby?" Emma nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Ethan lifted her, spun her, both of them crying and laughing. "We made a baby," he said. wonder in his voice. We actually made a baby. He set her down carefully. Then his expression shifted to concern. Are you okay? Is everything okay? I don't know yet. We need to see a doctor. The first appointment was a week later. Dr. Rachel Morrison was in her 50s. Experienced. Calm. She did an ultrasound. They saw the tiny blob, heard the heartbeat, fast and strong. Both Emma and Ethan cried. Then Dr. Morrison's expression grew serious. Given your husband's height and build, this baby will likely be large. Your frame is quite small. We'll need to monitor you very closely. This is automatically classified as a high-risk pregnancy. Emma felt Ethan's hand tighten around hers. What does that mean? Ethan asked. It means more frequent checkups, more ultrasounds, careful monitoring, and possibly a planned cesarean section if the baby grows too large. Emma's heart sank. I wanted a natural birth. Dr. Morrison's expression was kind but firm. Let's see how things progress. But I want you prepared for the possibility. Your safety and the baby's safety are what matter most. They left the doctor's office in silence. In the car, Ethan gripped the steering wheel. This is my fault, he said quietly. What? If I wasn't so big, if you'd married someone normal-sized, this wouldn't be high risk. Emma reached over, took his hand. Stop. I chose you. I choose you again. We'll handle whatever comes. But what if something happens to you? What if I lose you because of this? You won't, Emma said with more certainty than she felt. But the fear had taken root. In both of them. The pregnancy was hard. By month 5, Emma's small frame struggled visibly. Her belly seemed enormous on her tiny body. She waddled instead of walked. Her back ached constantly. She couldn't sleep, couldn't find a comfortable position. Ethan was a nightmare of worry. He wanted her to quit work, to stay home. To rest, Emma refused. She needed normalcy, needed to feel useful. They fought about it, their first real fight as a married couple. You're being stubborn, Ethan said. You're being controlling, Emma shot back. I'm trying to keep you safe. I'm not made of glass. But the words beneath the words were clear. Ethan was terrified of losing her. Emma was terrified of being reduced to nothing but an incubator. They made up, tearfully, holding each other, promising to communicate better. By month 7, Dr. Morrison made the decision for them. The baby is measuring at 9 pounds already. Your body is struggling. I'm recommending a scheduled cesarean section at 38 weeks. Emma cried that night, felt like she'd failed somehow. Ethan held her, whispered reassurances, but they were both scared. The surgery was scheduled for a Friday, 2 weeks away. But their daughter had other plans. At 2 in the morning on a Tuesday, week 37, Emma's water broke. The pain came fast, brutal, contractions too close together. Something was wrong. Ethan, Emma gasped. Something's wrong. It hurts too much. He carried her to the car, drove through empty Chicago streets, faster than safe, not caring. At the hospital, medical staff swarmed, got Emma into a wheelchair, rushed her to labor and delivery. Dr. Morrison examined her quickly. Her expression grew grave. The baby's in distress. Heart rate is dropping. We need to do the cesarean now. Emergency protocol. Emma barely had time to process before they were wheeling her into an operating room. Ethan, dressed in scrubs that looked comically small on his massive frame, held her hand as the anesthesia took effect. I'm scared, Emma whispered. I'm right here, Ethan said, his voice steady despite the tears streaming down his face. I'm not going anywhere. You've got this. We've got this. The surgery took less than an hour but felt like forever. Emma numb from the chest down, could feel pressure and pulling, but no pain. Ethan kept his eyes locked on hers, refused to look at what was happening beyond the surgical drape. Then suddenly a cry, not Emma's. Tiny, outraged, absolutely furious at being pulled from the warm darkness into bright lights. It's a girl, Dr. Morrison announced, and Emma heard the smile in her voice. A very healthy, very large girl. How large? Ethan asked, his voice shaking. 9 pounds, 4 ounces. 22 inches long. They placed the baby on Emma's chest, and the world stopped. She was perfect, covered in vernix and blood and beautiful in a way that made Emma's chest ache. She had Ethan's dark skin and broad features, but her eyes, when they blinked open, were green like Emma's. Hi, Emma whispered through tears. Hi, baby girl. I'm your mama. We've been waiting so long to meet you. Ethan pressed his forehead against Emma's, one massive hand gently cupping their daughter's tiny head. She's perfect. You're perfect. God, Emma, we made an actual human being. And in that moment, holding their daughter between them, Emma knew. They hadn't just proved everyone wrong about their wedding night. They'd proved everyone wrong about everything. Recovery was brutal. Emma had known it would be, had read the medical literature, had treated patients who'd undergone cesarean sections. But knowing and experiencing were different universes. The incision burned, 6 inches across her lower abdomen, staples holding her together. Every movement sent fire through her core. Sitting up, standing, walking the 10 feet to the bathroom. All of it agony, but none of it mattered when she looked at her daughter. They named her Zoe Diana Riley Cole. Zoe meaning life, Diana for Ethan's mother. She was 5 days old now, lying in the bassinet beside Emma's hospital bed, sleeping the deep sleep of the newly born. Tiny fists curled against her cheeks. Perfect. Ethan sat in the chair he'd barely left since the surgery, his massive frame folded into furniture designed for normal-sized humans. He'd been holding Zoe for 3 hours. Emma had finally convinced him to put her down so the baby could sleep. "You need to rest too," Emma said. Her voice was hoarse from the breathing tube during surgery. "Can't sleep," Ethan said. "Too worried I'll miss something." "She's fine. We're all fine." But Ethan's eyes were shadowed. Emma knew he hadn't truly relaxed since the emergency, since seeing Emma rushed into surgery, since those terrifying minutes when he'd sat alone in a waiting room, not knowing if his wife and daughter would survive. "Hey," Emma said softly, "look at me." Ethan raised his eyes. "We made it, all three of us. We're here. We're okay." "You almost weren't," Ethan said, his voice cracked. "The doctor said if we'd waited even another hour, if the baby's heart rate had dropped any lower. But we didn't wait, and she's perfect, and I'm healing." "We did this, Ethan, we actually did this." A nurse came in then, middle-aged, kind eyes. She checked Emma's vitals, examined the incision, pronounced everything healing well. "You can go home tomorrow if you're feeling up to it," she said. Tomorrow felt both too soon and not soon enough. The first night home was chaos. The penthouse felt different with a baby in it. Smaller somehow, despite its size. Every sound seemed amplified. Every responsibility seemed enormous. Zoe cried every 2 hours. Needed feeding, changing, soothing. Emma tried to breastfeed, but the pain from the incision made positioning difficult. She winced with every latch, tears streaming down her face from pain and hormones and exhaustion. Ethan hovered, trying to help, getting in the way, taking Zoe when Emma needed to rest. Walking circles around the apartment at 3 in the morning, this tiny infant against his massive chest, murmuring reassurances neither of them believed. By dawn, they were both zombies. "How do people do this?" Emma asked. She was sitting on the couch, still in her pajamas, nursing Zoe for what felt like the 100th time. Very carefully, Ethan said. He brought her water, crackers, had learned that breastfeeding made her ravenously thirsty and hungry. "I look awful," Emma said. She'd caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror, hair unwashed for days, dark circles under her eyes, body strange and unfamiliar. "You look beautiful," Ethan said, and he meant it. This woman who'd grown their child, who'd undergone surgery to bring a Zoe safely into the world, who was feeding their daughter from her own body. She'd never been more beautiful to him. "Liar," Emma said, but she smiled. 6 weeks postpartum was a milestone. Dr. Morrison cleared Emma for normal activities. The incision had healed into a pink scar across her lower abdomen, a permanent reminder. Emma traced it sometimes, remembered the emergency, the fear, the moment they'd placed Zoe on her chest. Worth it, she thought. Every second, worth it. But her body felt foreign. Her stomach, once flat, now soft and lined with stretch marks. Her breasts swollen with milk. Her hips wider. She'd lost some of the pregnancy weight, but not all. Probably never would. She stood in front of the full-length mirror in their bedroom, naked, examining the damage. Ethan came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. His hands spanned her entire midsection. He pressed his lips to her neck. "What are you thinking?" "That I don't recognize myself." His hands moved to the scar, traced it gently. "This is where Zoe came from. This right here, your body did something miraculous. These marks are proof of your strength." He kissed the scar. Emma felt tears threaten. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too. Every inch of you." They made love for the first time since Zoe's birth. Gentle, careful, Emma still tender. But the connection between them as strong as ever. Proof that they were still them. Still Ethan and Emma, not just Zoe's parents. When Zoe was 3 months old, Diana Cole came to visit. She stayed for 2 weeks, took over the apartment like a benevolent general, cooked meals, did laundry, held Zoe for hours so Emma could sleep. so Ethan could breathe. You raised Ethan alone, Emma said one afternoon. They were sitting in the living room, Zoe asleep in Diana's arms. How did you do it? One day at a time, Diana said. Some days 1 hour at a time. You do what needs doing. You love them hard. You pray a lot. Were you scared? Terrified. Every single day. Still am. Diana looked at her son. He was sprawled on the floor asleep, the exhaustion of new parenthood written on his face. But look at him. Look at what he became. You do your best. You love them. And you hope it's enough. Emma thought about that, about hope, about love being enough. What if we mess this up? What if we're terrible parents? Diana laughed softly. Then you'll be like every other parent in the world. Nobody knows what they're doing. We're all just making it up as we go. But that baby, she's got two parents who love her, who love each other. That's more than most kids get. Emma returned to work when Zoe was 4 months old. Part-time, 3 days a week. Diana stayed to help with childcare. Emma missed her daughter desperately, but had also craved the return to normalcy, to being Emma the physical therapist. Not just Emma the mother. Her coworkers descended immediately. How was the delivery, one asked. Did it hurt? Was the C-section awful? It was fine, Emma said, which was both true and a lie. And Ethan? Another coworker. The same one who'd warned Emma before the wedding. Was he careful? Emma felt heat rise in her face. The questions were invasive, inappropriate, but she'd expected them. Everything worked out exactly as it should, she said firmly, but the questions haunted her, followed her home. She lay awake at night thinking about all the couples who must face the same doubts, the same warnings, the same invasive questions. Maybe their story could help. The idea grew slowly, like Zoe herself had grown. Starting small, becoming impossible to ignore. Emma started writing. Late at night, laptop balanced. Zoe asleep in her bassinet nearby. She wrote about meeting Ethan, about falling in love, about the wedding, about pregnancy and childbirth and proving everyone wrong. She wrote the truth, not sanitized, not polished, raw and honest and real. When she finished, weeks later, she had 3,000 words, their story distilled into paragraphs. She showed Ethan. He read in silence. Emma watched his face, saw emotions flicker across it. When he finished, he looked up. His eyes were wet. This is beautiful, he said. This is us. Do you think people would want to read it? I think people need to read it. Emma created a blog, called it Love Beyond Limits, posted the essay, titled it Everyone Said It Wouldn't Work. Our Story. She didn't expect much. The blog went viral. Within days, thousands of views. Within weeks, hundreds of thousands. Comments flooded in. Messages filled her inbox. People from around the world. Couples facing similar doubts, similar warnings, similar impossible odds. Jennifer from Texas, 22 years old, dating a football player, terrified. Everyone tells me it won't work, that he's too big, that I'll get hurt. Your story gave me hope. How did you get past the fear? Emma responded. Took time with each message, shared what she learned about trust, about communication, about taking time and listening to your body and finding a partner who values your safety above their pleasure. Michael from California, 6'10", in love with a woman who was 4'11". My family thinks I'm crazy. Her family thinks she's crazy. But I love her. Your story showed me it's possible. Emma wrote back, encouraged him, shared resources, offered hope. The blog grew. Emma posted regularly about parenting, about marriage, about the ongoing adventure of being physically mismatched, but emotionally aligned. Ethan contributed, wrote a guest post, titled it On Being Gentle. Society tells men to be strong, to be dominant, to take what we want. But the strongest thing I've ever done is learn to be gentle. Real masculinity isn't about power over someone. It's about power in the service of someone. His post went viral too, shared by men worldwide. Fathers sending it to sons, women sending it to partners. A conversation starting about strength and gentleness and what it means to be a man. Zoe grew. At 6 months, she was in the 99th percentile for height and weight. At her 1-year checkup, the pediatrician smiled. She's going to be tall like Daddy. Very tall. Ethan held his daughter. She looked tiny in his arms still, but growing, always growing, just like her old man, he said proudly. When Zoe was 5, she started kindergarten. She was already the tallest child in her class by 4 inches, taller than some first graders. She had Ethan's height and Emma's features, a striking combination that drew stares. The first few weeks went well. Zoe loved school, loved her teacher, loved learning. She came home every day chattering about letters and numbers and new friends. Then came the incident. Emma got a call from the school. Mrs. Peterson, Zoe's teacher, asked if they could meet. Emma's stomach dropped. Nothing good ever came from that request. They met the next afternoon. Emma and Ethan squeezed into child-sized chairs in the kindergarten classroom. Mrs. Peterson sat across from them. Her expression was kind but serious. Zoe's been asking questions, she began. About families, about how everyone looks different. Some of the other children have made comments. What kind of comments? Ethan's voice was carefully neutral. Nothing malicious, just curious. Children notice differences. But one girl, Emma, told Zoe that her mom said it was weird that you're so small and Mr. Cole is so big, that it doesn't make sense. Emma felt like she'd been punched. How did Zoe respond? She came to me, confused, asked if it was weird, if her family was wrong somehow. Emma and Ethan exchanged glances. We'll talk to her, Emma said. That evening, they found Zoe in her room, coloring quietly, too quietly. Hey, baby, Emma said, can we talk? Zoe looked up. Her green eyes, so like Emma's, were troubled. Am I going to be as big as Daddy? Probably, Emma said honestly. Maybe not quite as tall, but you're going to be very tall. Is that bad? Emma sat on the floor, pulled Zoe into her lap. Ethan joined them, the three of them on the carpet of Zoe's bedroom. A family. No, Emma said firmly. Being tall isn't bad. Being short isn't bad. Being different isn't weird. Different is just different. But Emma said her mom said you and Daddy don't make sense. Ethan spoke then, his voice gentle. Do you know what makes sense, Zoe? Love makes sense. Your mama and I love each other very much. We love you more than anything in the world. That's what matters. But you're so big and Mama's so small. And that's okay, Emma said. Sometimes different things go together to make something beautiful. Like how we made you. Zoe thought about this seriously, her young face thoughtful. Can I tell Emma that? You can tell Emma whatever you want. But mostly I want you to remember that families come in all different shapes and sizes. What makes us a family isn't how we look. It's how we love each other. Zoe seemed satisfied with this, returned to her coloring. But Emma and Ethan stayed on the floor, holding hands, realizing this was only the beginning, that their daughter would face these questions her entire life. They could only hope they'd given her the tools to answer. 3 years later, when Zoe was 8 and thriving, Emma discovered she was pregnant again. She stared at the test. 2 pink lines. Again. Unexpected. Unplanned. But not unwanted. She told Ethan that night, watched his face light up, felt his arms around her, heard him whisper thank you into her hair. The pregnancy was easier in some ways. They knew what to expect, knew the warning signs. Dr. Morrison scheduled a cesarean at 38 weeks. No surprises this time. But it was harder in others. Emma was older, 31 now, chasing an energetic 8-year-old. Her body remembered the trauma of the first pregnancy. Resisted. Ethan was overprotective. Wanted her to stop working immediately. Emma refused. They argued, made up, compromised. And then came the offer. The Chicago Bulls wanted to extend Ethan's contract. 5 years, $120 million. Generational wealth. Security beyond anything either of them had imagined. But there was a condition, full commitment. No extended leaves, no special considerations. Ethan sat with the contract for a week, reading it, rereading it, not telling Emma. Finally, she confronted him. What's going on? You've been weird all week. He showed her the contract, explained the terms, watched her face. That's a lot of money, Emma said quietly. It is. What do you want to do? Ethan looked at their daughter. Zoe was in the living room, playing, laughing, growing up fast. Too fast. I want to be here, he said. I want to watch Zoe grow up. Want to be here for this new baby. Want to be the husband you deserve. Basketball has given me everything. But I think it's time to give it something back. My time. My future. So I can give those things to you instead. Emma felt tears burn. Are you sure that's a lot of money to walk away from? We have enough. The blog is doing well. Your job? We'll be fine, and I'll be here. Really here. Not traveling, not exhausted. Not missing moments I can never get back. Emma kissed him, tasted salt, realized they were both crying. Okay, she whispered. Let's do it. Ethan announced his retirement 2 weeks later, held a press conference, explained his decision. The media exploded. Some called him soft, weak, whipped. Others called him brave. A family man, someone with his priorities straight. Ethan didn't care. He'd made his choice. Their second daughter was born 3 months later, via scheduled cesarean. 10 pounds even. Bigger than Zoe. Healthy. Perfect. They named her Emma Grace. Grace for the grace they'd been given. Emma because Ethan insisted. Because Emma had given him everything. Zoe adored her baby sister, held her carefully, sang to her, became the most devoted big sister imaginable. Their family was complete. The years blurred. Zoe grew tall, surpassed Emma's height by age 10, 5'4" and still growing. She played basketball like her father, had his court sense, his instincts. Ethan coached her, spent hours in the driveway, teaching, playing, bonding. Emma Grace grew too, quieter than her sister, more artistic, but just as tall, just as strong. At 7, she was already 5 feet tall. The blog continued, the community grew, thousands of couples helped, messages of gratitude, stories of hope, weddings, babies, lives changed. Emma and Ethan spoke at conferences, gave interviews, became advocates for couples facing doubt, for love that transcended physical differences. But mostly they lived, raised their daughters, loved each other, proved every single day that the impossible was possible. 15 years after that February night at the gala, Emma sat in her home office, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The blog post was finished. 3,000 words, a reflection on 15 years, on everything they'd overcome, everything they'd built. She heard footsteps. Ethan appeared in the doorway, older now, gray, threading his hair, laugh lines around his eyes, still impossibly handsome. "What are you working on?" "Final blog post," she said. "I think it's time." "Time for what?" "To close this chapter. We've said what we needed to say, helped who we could help. Now it's time to just live, just be us." Ethan came to stand behind her, read over her shoulder. When he finished, he pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "It's perfect, just like you." Emma clicked publish. The post went live, titled 15 Years Later, Still Proving Them Wrong. Within hours, comments flooded in, thousands of them. "Thank you, we love you. You changed our lives." Emma closed the laptop, turned to her husband, this man who'd bent down to kiss her at a gala 15 years ago, who'd taken her for pie, who'd proposed after 3 months, who'd been gentle when everyone said he couldn't be, who'd chosen family over fame, who'd loved her every single day. "No regrets?" she asked. "Not one," he said. "Best decision I ever made. Choosing you." "Same," Emma whispered. They heard the front door open, their daughters home from school. Zoe was 15 now, Emma Grace 12, both taller than their mother, both beautiful, both proof that love really did find a way. The girls burst into the office, talking over each other. Zoe had made varsity basketball, youngest player on the team. Emma Grace had gotten the lead in the school play. Ethan and Emma listened, celebrated, hugged their daughters, felt the weight of 15 years, the joy of it, the struggle, the triumph. That night, after the girls were asleep, Emma and Ethan stood by the window, looking out at Chicago, the city where they'd met, where they'd married, where they'd built this impossible life. "Do you remember what everyone said?" Emma asked. "That it wouldn't work?" "I remember. They were wrong. They were," Ethan agreed. "Not because it was easy, but because we chose each other every single day." Emma leaned into his chest, fit perfectly under his chin, like she always had, like she always would. "And I'd do it all again," she said in a heartbeat. "Me too," Ethan whispered. "Me too." Outside, the city glittered. Inside, their daughter slept. Proof that love really could bridge any gap, overcome any obstacle, defy any expectation. Emma closed her eyes, felt Ethan's arms around her, felt 15 years of choosing each other, of proving the world wrong, of building something beautiful from impossible circumstances. And she knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning. Love, real love, didn't have an ending. It just kept growing, kept evolving, kept proving that when two hearts recognize each other, when two people choose each other despite everything, when love becomes more than chemistry or compatibility or common sense, something miraculous happens. The impossible becomes possible. The different becomes perfect. And everyone who said it wouldn't work becomes nothing more than background noise to a love story that was always meant to be. Emma smiled in the darkness. They'd done it, against all odds, despite all warnings, through all challenges. They'd proven that love really was enough. And that was everything. The end.